Imagine spending almost 2 hours, to cover a distance of less than 20 kilometers. Well, that is a situation in Nairobi where people have to spend endless hours during rush hour, in order to get to the office or to get home. Now, the government's way of dealing with these was through the creation of the Nairobi Area Metropolitan Transport Authority, NAMATA, which is supposed to come up, with a strategy on how to deal with these existential problem. And it is estimated that as a country, we lose about 100 billion shillings every year to traffic jam. I mean, it's a complicated mathematic, but it can be explained. And so joining us tonight to help us understand what is NAMATA doing to deal with endless traffic jam in Nairobi is Engineer Francis Gitau. He's the Director General of NAMATA. Thank you so much indeed, Engineer, for your time.
Welcome.
Very good. I know you've been stuck in traffic jam. I don't know where you live, but for sure I know that this is something that you have to deal with, on a daily basis. How does that make you feel, when you have to spend hours in a situation whereby you could spend minutes, to get to destination, from destination A to destination B?
O'Brien, I think your observation is the reality in Nairobi. And many of our growing metropolis and even some secondary towns like Eldoret and Nakuru, it is also, existing in Mombasa. So it's a national problem. And the need to create NAMATA is to create a worthy partner in the development of mass rapid transit infrastructure and also in the coordination of the strategic development of a mass rapid transit system that actually optimizes on public investment. We know for sure, even when we survey Nairobi, on the roads with the jams, we have a backbone commuter rail infrastructure stretching about 200 kilometers that is suboptimally used. We have an expressway we call it what we call a superhighway,
The Thika superhighway,
with many lanes, but all of them substantially used by the motorized individuals. Looking at the mode of spirit in terms of the travel, a choice of travel in Nairobi, you'll find 40% of our people are using the paratransit, the matatus and the buses. 40% are walking. The people with individual cars are actually between 9 and 15%, because we have other people who are using other modes of transport like the borders. The challenge for NAMATA, number one, is to create a mobility strategy that ensures that we optimize on the use of the available infrastructure. This is going to be achieved through two strategies. One is to demarcate the existing corridors and prioritize public transportation means on some of these highways. And also we are going to do greenfield development of infrastructure that has the public transportation component as a priority. We also want to achieve the goal of having people, not only in terms of their economic means, but that everybody being attracted to these modes of transport because they'll be reliable, affordable, and safe.
and safe.
So when we look at it in NAMATA, we also have the mandate of integrating infrastructure development action, infrastructure related to bus rapid transport, bringing agencies together, be they the highway development agencies, be they the operating agencies that like Kenya Railways is operating the commuter rail, and the private sector, which for 30 years have continuously invested in the rolling stock on our roads. We want to bring them together so that we create one urban mobility plan, we create one operational strategy with service quality on each of these corridors so that the travel experience in Nairobi will be transformed.
In a country, whereby long bureaucratic processes, are the norms, what are the intricacies and challenges, of bringing on the table about 5 counties of Nairobi, Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos, and Murang'a together, plus bringing other state agencies like Kenha, like Kera, like Kura, and coming up with a plan that is agreeable to everyone and it is implemented?
The beauty about this, especially the recent developments in government, we were talking about a one government approach, that every agency are all called to the same table and we're able to act as one, synergizing together. What has happened on the institutional level, whereby we are bringing five counties together with separate county governments, together with the national government, that has been achieved through the executive order. 2017, 17th February, of creating NAMATA. The platform has been set with a council that has governors in place as members, chaired by the Cabinet Secretary of Transport, with a board that has brought in the CECs of each of these counties into that board, and we have three competently recruited directors who can guide the direction of NAMATA. Now the challenge is to create the management that actually now has, brings the action to the ground. So we're in the process through the State Corporation Advisory Committee to be operationalized so that we can recruit staff that are competent in actually implementing the vision that has actually been most borne by the very top, the head of this country. And when we talk about the administrative action of agencies, that has been achieved through the Cabinet Secretary. He has created a program delivery unit that is actually chaired by NAMATA. And the program delivery unit has KENHA, Kenya National Highway Authority, Kenya Urban Roads Authority, we have the Kenya Airports Authority, we have a representation from Inspector General, we have representation from the NTSA, and the Kenya Railway Corporation. In fact, under the Kenya Railway Corporation, we have two representatives, one representing the commuter rail unit. So that program delivery unit is supposed to work for the achievement of all the work streams that are being implemented by all agencies.
Tell me this, I mean, since, NAMATA was created through an executive order in the year 2017, don't you think the traffic jam situation is getting worse by the day? The population of the city is growing on a daily basis, and the situation is not getting any better.
In fact, O'Brien, we can say NAMATA has achieved a lot as an institution. In the first instance, we had a board inaugurated in June 2018. Of course, took a long time to get the board in place. Now that the board is in place, we have embarked on preparing certain aspects of the industry transformation. Public transportation is highly politicized. It's an economic issue. It's a social and cultural issue. So on 22nd March 2019, we formed a task force that has engaged the current operators of public transport, and that task force is headed by NAMATA. I'm actually the chair of that task force. We've been working through 4 work streams, and the work streams are the following. We have one work stream on infrastructure and operations. We have another one on business models and financing. We have another one of creating a bus operating company for the current operators, and the several contracts that will come into place in terms of transportation services and maintenance services and other secondary services that will be offered to that mass rapid transit system, including an automatic fare correction system. Then we have a work stream on transition and communication. We've had several experts that have come to assist us in developing a communication strategy, a communication plan, and I want to assure you, O'Brien, that this year, 2020, you'll start seeing communication on the ground. There's a big commitment, even through the board, to start even holding town halls, to start taking the message now from the boardroom to the Wajiko on the ground.
To the town halls.
Yeah, to the town halls, because it is for sure that some of the issues that we have worked out under the task force, we could not have moved out without them first having a consensus in terms of what structure can a bus operating company take. That's a very sensitive thing, because about investment. What you think about then the communication plan, whom and which public do you tailor what message to? Then that was very very, very, very technical, because then we have several public layers that require different messages. And those are being crafted. Several of them are in place. And we have our initial communication plan that will make sure that O'Brien tomorrow and your team, you start hearing and seeing what NAMATA.
You're fortunate enough, you travel a lot. And, when you talk about any functional big city, you cannot talk about a city without an operational and an efficient railway transport system. From Beijing to London to Moscow. And when you look at Nairobi, I mean, the railway system that we have here is not optimal. What are we going to do to ensure that we have a system that moves people, en masse from point A to point B? Number one, on time. Number two, efficiently. And number three, cost-wise.
You have stated it very well, because if you see the peripheral and central stations that were developed 100 years ago, they were all freight, they were configured for freight. They were basically to service the freight function, carrying goods from the interior to the coast. So we had a meeting last week in Mombasa, chaired by our PS, Chausinga, with the Kenya Railway Corporation Board. And it's clear, starting from today, is that they are going to create a new history. In the next 100 years, the railway system will be configured to serve the public, especially the commuter rail network. We have seen great action through some projects like NAMSIP. We have seen the development of 10 stations, brand new stations. You have seen Dadora. Have you been there? No. You have seen Makandara, Kikuyu. All these stations now along the railway line, they are now coming to bring the new strategy of service to the commuters. These stations, they are now ready, all of them. Now the action is to integrate the bus transport routes and the matatu transport routes to the backbone commuter rail infrastructure. What we have heard even in the newspapers, and we know, is that the ministry is ready to import some diesel multiple units on the commuter rail service. Modernize the commuter rail service. As the commuter rail service gets modernized, we shall have the bus rapid transit system as the complementary service to complementary service to the commuter rail service, meaning the buses will complement the rail backbone infrastructure. And then the stations will be multimodal, meaning they will integrate into the road network. And within these particular stations, you'll find we have facilities like parking services. So those ones will help us have a lot of people transfer from their motorized mode of transport into public transportation. 75% of the vehicles on our roads are you and I, the individual motorized. In fact, you'll be shocked, the matatus and the buses contribute to nothing in terms of congestion. But why you're using your car is because you cannot plan your journey otherwise. What we give you under NAMATA will be a service that you can plan your journey from morning till evening, affordably, reliably, safely. And that is a value proposition that must be provided to the people of Nairobi.
We're talking about Ngong Road. We're talking about Langata Road, Thika Road, Mombasa Road, and so forth. Can you paint a picture for us? How people from all these areas, what plans you have for them, to ensure that they get to the city and they leave the city, at the easiest and at the most cost-effective way.
We have done a service plan. We have corrected the ridership in terms of boarding and lighting surveys. We know the kind of demand streams that are coming into the city. The only solution is to have the remodeling of the city of Nairobi. We are saying within the CBD, we would more prefer the more sustainable modes like walking. In the peripheral bit, we would want to have the transit, and that is the buses and the commuter rail serving. For example, if you consider the diamond between the university, the Grove Cinema roundabout, going all the way to Kenyatta Avenue, and all the way back to Koinange Street, that could be a walking, uh, what we call a cordon. And then beyond that, maybe you could have this transit service, a circular route around the city, so that if you're at the University of Nairobi, you can have a circulatory route that is dropping you at the central station and bringing you back to Koja Mosque and Gara. It's possible to configure that. But what we must develop at the periphery of this city are terminus, bus terminus, regional termination points that then are able to relieve a lot of people at the peripheral stations and termini, and then transfer to high capacity occupancy vehicles, like the bus rapid transit system. Have dedicated corridors into the city, in that there is very little time spent on these corridors. If you're dropped in Roiro, you are able to drive maybe at an average consistent speed of 30, 50 kilometers per hour, and you'll be in Nairobi under 20, 30 minutes. So that is a strategy. Create multimodal facilities. Integrate commuter rail and bus rapid transfer services. Provide even also for the motorized individual access that is also designated. There are some places where you may have to pay a toll to get into, and therefore it will also discourage you to maybe use your motorized transport. But provide facilities in the periphery of the city, provide rapid transport services, demarcate lanes for public transport, and use the high capacity vehicle. Some of these strategies are there. They have been used other places, and I think we shall succeed with them. I think our challenge is we must start implementing. Recently, last December, you saw we advertised the demarcation of Thika Road, a small area. We want to create stations. Supposed to launch with 13 stations, but we have optimal 26 of them. We may start building 5, but that is the beginning. We must be given the chance to demarcate Thika Road for public transport. And then the transformation will begin. The tender documents are coming back on 27th. Evaluation is expected maybe 14 days. Could we see action before the end of June?
Before the end of June. That's when we are likely to see, the first stations in, or breaking grounds. Tell me this. I mean, one day we woke up and, Thika Road was painted in red. Some people will say pink. I don't know. There were pictures, of BRT buses, that were being procured from South Africa. And there was a sigh of relief, for people who use Thika Road. What became of that dream? And the paint has actually now, it has faded. It has faded, yeah.
The Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act prescribes different methods of procurement. Most preferred is open tendering. When we were procuring these buses, it was evident, and there was a lot of pressure, that public transportation is an emergency. It requires urgent action. When you look at South Africa, when we were acting on that emergency, our thrust was the buses that were already BRT ready were only in South Africa. And therefore, we thought we could, of course, start a process that is prescribed in the PPDA, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, of direct procurement. But direct procurement also, to get the nod of the law, requires that you have a clear budget. What we did, we didn't have a budget for 64 buses. We had a budget initially allocated in the first financial year, maybe half of that, about 32 buses. So we could not be able to get immediate approval. But going ahead, with infrastructure being developed, you shall see us going to open tender.
Mm-hmm. So where are the buses? Are they still in South Africa?
Definitely they must be in South Africa, O'Brien, because they were never procured.
Oh, but they were painted with NAMATA color, they were blue and yellow?
Usually when you are doing the branding and you are giving your specifications, you are able to try it on 1 or 2 buses. I do agree. There was a bus that we even brought as a demonstration bus. Actually, the supplier decided to bring it so that it could be a demonstration bus, basically to bring our people on board on what high capacity, low flow, universal access bus was all about. But we have not been able even to use it in NAMATA for training because it is still not procured. If we were to procure it as
in South
NAMATA,
Africa, in Nairobi?
no, we have a bus in Mombasa.
In Mombasa.
In Mombasa, one came, and I think everybody knows that. It's only that it cannot be handed over to NAMATA because NAMATA has not paid for it.
Yes.
So when we pay for it, be sure we will be the first people to ride
So
in
the
it.
bus is stuck in Mombasa?
Not stuck, it's that it was not supposed to come to Nairobi. It was supposed to be a demonstration bus.
In Mombasa?
But not procured as yet, not paid for, and therefore its use in Nairobi cannot be effected until that procurement process is wrapped up. Yeah,
When do you expect this to be concluded?
I think with this development of infrastructure, hoping the first phase we're calling a pilot, we're estimating the infrastructure can be ready in 6 to 8 months. If the construction was to start in June, then we'll be having a corridor maybe by December. And therefore, it will be prudent by that time to have buses on the ground. It would also not have been very good to have buses parked somewhere and they had nowhere to run over. That is the time also we were busy working with the operators to create the bus operating company, because who will operate them? And again, we didn't want them to be operated by people with the old industrial mentality and then give still a poor quality service. The value proposition is that everything on the table, bus operating company, the buses, and infrastructure was speaking together. And more so, having an automatic fare correction system, which is now currently being implemented in the commuter rail service and will be integrated to the buses. That will help us in safeguarding the fare port so that there can be integrity, there can be a business plan that is sustainable, and people can invest in it because it has ways and means of lowering the risk of operations.
You know, as we wrap up in the interest of time, what is the game plan? How do you plan to integrate, you know, the operators of public transport currently, or if you like, the Matatu Owners Association? How do you plan to integrate them into the system?
In fact, having sat with them for a year, they actually own the narrative. They own the narrative. The work streams you're working on, they actually chair those work streams. We have individuals from the associations. We have taken the 6 associations that existed in July last year. We have been able to have their AGMs nominate the chairman and the secretaries to the task force. We've been sitting with them for over 1.5 years now. They have been leading the work streams in terms of the industrial transformation. We have just managed to go to South Africa. They are very hungry to go to Dar es Salaam. They even want to see Bogota. We will continue training them. And we are having consultants. Like we have consultants provided to us by the European Union. We have embedded them into their units, subcommittees. We have communication strategists. We have transportation planners. We have industrial transition experts. And these people are working with them on a daily basis. Yesterday in the morning, they were discussing our first transport service contract, the first draft. The draft that can bring them on board in terms of us signing off a transport service contract. If you check the bus operating company, they have already done the structure. They will be presenting it to us tomorrow, the bus operating company. If you check the BRT regulations, they have already been drafted. They are ready for public participation.
You know, in the PR world, people say that talk is cheap.
Yes.
Actions. Exactly. I want you to face the people, this camera, and you promise Nairobians what they should expect before the year 2021. You have about 12 months from now.
The people of Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, metropolitan area, that is the 5 counties. When you look at a transformation of an industry that has had only one model of operation, having the private sector invest in the rolling stock, then utilize infrastructure that is much more configured to individual motorized transport, is not an easy thing. Takes time, takes planning. We are doing the plans. By the end of this year, we expect to roll out our first phase, which is a pilot phase of about 20 kilometers, and that is just construction. After construction of that corridor, we expect that we will be able to procure adequate buses to service the demand that is on that corridor. I want to tell you that the peak passenger per hour per direction on Thika Road is estimated at 36,000 people. Even if you had buses carrying 100 people, it simply means you need 360 buses. Even if you were to buy a bus at 10 million, 360,000 buses. O'Brien, you can help me. Isn't that 3.6 billion? So you can see the kind of investment that is required. We will require to work together as a team. The transition is not about government. The transition is you as a person, is the private sector, is development partners, is all of us to work out the way we want to see Nairobi transform. And then us as an institution, as NAMATA, to bear our responsibility and act diligently to service the mobility plan and a pragmatic implementation plan. And hopefully, and knowing that the commitment of our government is to transform this industry, we know we shall be able to access the resources to commence this transformation.
Engineer, God-giving life, 12 months from now, we shall hold you accountable to the pilot project. And of course, we'll be on the ground to see how it's being rolled out.
Thank you.
Engineer Francis Gitau is the Director General of Nairobi Area Metropolitan Transport Authority, joining us here tonight to explain to us what is NAMATA doing to ease communication or transport in the city of Nairobi, and not just in Nairobi, but in the 5 counties of Nairobi, Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos, and Murang'a. You have heard it from him. I'm not going to repeat. Thank you for your time. This has been Inside Government. Enjoy the rest of the programming. Bye for now.